Hi, this is a review of the DBX 286s microphone preamp processor channel strip. Basically, this is the device you want if you want to do a lot less in the post-processing process. You want your audio to sound good right off the bat, whether you're doing YouTube videos, whether you're doing podcasting. This is a way to get your audio sounding good. This is a way to take care of a few of the most annoying audio problems before your audio actually gets recorded. And this is a way to just make your overall workflow that much easier. We're going to be going through the device. You're listening to it right now. We're going to be going through all the different settings, showing you what they do, showing you the effect that changing the settings has on the audio. And that way you can at least be a little bit more familiar with what this does, how it works, and why you need it. For the purposes of this review, we're using a dynamic microphone. This is an Electro Voice RE320. It's being fed into a cloud lifter for 20 decibels of very clear gain, which is then being fed into this channel strip, which is then being fed into a Scarlett Focusrite Scarlett 1, which is then sending the audio both to my PC while I'm recording this video, and it's sending it to a Zoom audio recorder, which is the audio that we'll be using for this review. Now, overall, it's a simple device once you get it set up, but a lot of people seem to be confused about what the device actually does. So let's take a quick look and see the basics, see the changes that it makes into the audio as you're using the device, and what turning things on and off will do. Right now, you're listening to my voice being processed. You can see as I talk, the level meter there is going up. Now, for a normal setting, what you want this at is just hitting that zero, that yellow light, without hitting the red. If you're hitting the red, it's clipping. That means the signal is too loud, it's too hot going into the device, and there's really nothing you can do to clean that up. Once a signal is overmodulated and distorted, there's no way to get that back. So if you're doing recording on anything, always err on the other way, which is a little bit lower recording level, and you can always normalize that, and it's easy to bring audio up now without getting a lot of noise, where in the olden days you wanted to get close to that saturation point or even a little bit over it to get the particular sound you were looking for, especially if doing vocals or guitars where you wanted a little bit of that distortion. But for the purposes of what we're doing, voiceovers, podcasting, videos, you want things to be as clear as possible, and that's what we'll be focusing on here today. You can see on the DBX controls here, we have the gain set fairly low. It's probably about somewhere in the 22 decibel range. As you can see, it goes all the way up to 60, which would be the max. Microphones like the Shure SM7B require about 60 decibels of gain in order for them to get the full dynamic range out of the microphone. Now, with any preamp, which is what this is, the more you push that, the more gain you get, the more noise you're going to be introducing into the line, which is usually heard as a little staticky, a little bit of a hum, which is why we're using a cloud lifter. 20 decibels of gain, you can run the line here. You can run the gain a lot less, even with microphones like the Shure SM7B that require a whole lot of gain. This RE320 is a very hot microphone as far as dynamic microphones go, meaning it doesn't need anywhere near as much gain. As you can see with the cloud lifter giving us 20, we're probably using about 22 to 25 from where the setting is right now. So the cloud lifter taken out of this, the RE320 could run at about 45, sound good, and you're not really overtaxing the preamp. With the Shure SM7B, you would be, because you'd almost want that totally maxed out to get the best possible sound. Now, you're seeing there's a couple different controls here, and we've got the 48 volts of phantom power, which we're using because that's powering the device, the cloud lifter that's giving me the extra gain. If you're normally using a dynamic microphone without a cloud lifter, you don't need the phantom power. You do need it, though, if you have a condenser microphone. So be aware, if you have a condenser microphone, you plug it in to this or a mixing board or whatever it is, you need the phantom power. Without the phantom power, you're not going to get any sound whatsoever. The 80 hertz bypass here, that will take care of if you have some distortion in the line, some wind noise, some hum. Basically, it's going to cut off anything below 80 hertz, and it gives you a little bit more of a compressed sound. So if you don't have that kind of a hum, if you don't have that issue, you wouldn't run with this on, because it actually affects the sound poorly. But obviously, if you have that hum or you have wind noise or something like that, engaging this might give you a better sound. For most people using the device, you're probably not going to use the 80 hertz high pass. The next little button you're going to see here is the process bypass, which will basically turn everything to the right of this off, all the settings that we haven't gotten to yet, and just run this strictly as a preamp. So there won't be any compression, there won't be a de-esser, there won't be a noise gate, and there won't be any enhancement on my voice, so none of the low end or high end will be enhanced. Now, as we press this, you'll notice everything changes completely. My voice sounds a little bit more harsh. You can start hearing a little bit of the echo in the room, especially as I back up a couple of inches from the microphone. You can actually hear the room noise very clearly in the audio chain. You can also hear the small fans that are running in the computer and in the air purifier that sits on the back wall of this room. So really, if you want a completely quiet room, you can either spend a whole lot of money on doing audio treatments, which isn't a bad thing to do, and you can get some extremely good results. But a device like this, if it's not in the real world, if you can't build a booth in your house or put a lot of audio deadening foam up on your walls, this gives you an opportunity to get a much cleaner sound, a much better sound, without having to go through all of that. So it's kind of cheating a little bit. We won't tell anybody, but it's what's going to give you a better sound, and it's going to be a lot easier to do than doing an audio all the way across, audio treatments all the way across your room. So again, this is with everything bypassed, and immediately you could hear especially if you're using headphones or had the volume fairly high, you can immediately hear the noise of the room disappears, and you're only hearing when I speak, because the unit is anything below a certain threshold, it's keeping that completely quiet. So again, this is with the device on. This is with the device off. This is with the device on. And this is with the device off. So it's one of those things, you can hear it immediately, and it's really surprising, especially once I close the door to the room. Without the door closed, it's not nearly as echoey. With the door closed, you can really hear the echo in the room. You can hear the room noise through the microphone. And when you turn the device on, that completely disappears, which is a very good thing. So we'll be moving down the line here. And once we get past the bypass, the bypass switch, the next thing we're going to get to is the compressor. Now, this is one of the most important things that you can get for making your audio sound good. And a lot of these things are available separately. You can buy a device that does nothing but compression. And as we go further down the line here, you can get a device that does nothing but add, there's the lower frequency and high frequency to add the emphasis to both of those. They have devices that do nothing but that process the signal that way. And then you have the expander noise gate, which you can get them all separately too. So this is why I call this a one-stop shop. It's a nice, easy way to get all of this processing done simply, easily in one device. And if you're a one-man crew, doing podcasting or something like that, this is really all you should need. Now, the compressor is what gives you that more of a radio sound. It levels everything off. So basically, with a compressor, the louder you speak, the compressor will kick in. As you see that the lights are coming on there. And as I speak louder, they're coming on more, because it's doing more of the job to level that off. And the quieter you speak, it's working less, but it's doing that to even everything out. So your voice should never sound like it's changing that much, even if you're moving closer to the microphone and then you're moving further away. And even though I'm speaking at the same level, the overall volume that you're getting should be about the same. You're going to get sometimes, you're going to get that slightly different sound because of the proximity factor when you get close to the microphone, but it helps with people that don't have proper mic technique, which most of us don't if you're not professionals, or if you have friends, or if you're doing an interview with somebody who isn't often behind the mic. What will happen is they're talking to you, they're kind of moving around from left to right, they're looking from up and down, and they're not really talking directly into the microphone. But what this device is going to do, it's going to try to even everything out so that while that's going on, the end user, the listener, isn't going to be distracted by major differences in the way their voice sounds. Now, the controls that you have here are fairly easy to understand. There's drive and density. Drive is the amount of compression that you're going to do. So if you bring this down to 0, as you can hear, it basically turns it off because it's not doing any compression any longer. So it's taking, my voice sounds the same. There's no processing really being done to it as far as the compressor goes. As you turn this up, there's a certain ratio. I like mine set it for between 3 and 4. You may like something a little bit different, but as you go up, this is the more compression that's being added. And as you can see, even though I'm talking at the same level, it's kicking in earlier, and it's giving less variation in my voice, and it starts really sounding very, very not, it doesn't sound organic anymore. Everything sounds way too processed, and it just doesn't give you a good sound. And you want it to be somewhere in that 3 to 4 range. The density, on the other hand, is how quick the device is going to kick in and how quick that compression is going to turn itself off. Now, if it's really, really quick, it'll compress fast, which is a good thing, because this is the most important thing for me with the compression is you want something that if it happens loud and it happens quick, you don't want your recorder again to get a signal that's too hot and distort. I don't like it too low to where it takes forever and it basically over compresses everything. As you can see, it takes how many seconds after I stop talking? Go. And it's like, 12 seconds or so until the compressor is fully disbanded. Again, you'll need to play around with the settings on your own to hear what sounds best. Put on a set of headphones, play around with it a little bit. But I find the 7, for me, with the most microphones that I use for the rooms that I'm in, it's fast enough for me to get what I need done. It's fast enough to give me the sound that I want, and it doesn't make things sound way too closed off, and it sounds much more natural. But again, your mileage may vary, so you'll want to play along with the settings there. But that's what the compressor does. It keeps the volume level at a more consistent level than if you didn't have it. If you have a lot of people that are speaking at the same time, it can definitely help if you're picking it up with one microphone. But overall, it makes sure things don't distort. It makes sure that there's not a lot of variances in the volume. So overall, it's a very good thing, and you definitely want a compressor. If you're doing any kind of serious audio work, it's definitely something that you're going to want. Now, as we move down the line here, what we have is the de-esser, which is probably the part of the system that the least amount of people will actually use. It's not something that I even use all the time when using this device. Basically, it listens for the semblance, which again is basically, let's see if we can pull this right about there to get that nice and clear. The semblance is that S sound at the end of words. And the frequency for most people is about 4K. And that's about when you hit you can see that lights it up. You make that snake hissing sound, it lights it up, and the threshold is the how much you want that to control. The S's, if you turn it totally off, it won't try to silence at all. If you turn that up, it won't try to silence that a lot more. So as you see, as you turn that up, it tries to silence those S's. But for most people, I don't think that's a big problem anymore. If you really over enunciate the S sound, this may be something that will help you out a great deal. For a lot of people, it may be the one thing on the strip that you won't play around with a whole lot. The next one is the enhancer, and I have to admit, I love the enhancer. I've been doing podcasting for years, and my go-to rig had a Aphex device, which was the big bottom and oral exciter, which I'm telling you, greatest name for an audio device ever, the Aphex 404. I forget the number on it, but it was big bottom oral exciter. And basically what it does is gives you a boost on the low end and a boost on the high end to give you more of that radio god voice. That's what podcasters are always looking for, right? It's that radio god voice. And what this does is it takes those low frequencies and it gives you a little bit more bass. That's what the low is. And you don't want to use too much of this. So let's just turn both of these off here. And all of a sudden you can hear my voice sounds a lot more dry. And it doesn't have the same presence that it does with both of these turned up. Now, the first one is the low end, and as we turn this up, you can hear the low end of my voice. The lower frequencies are being enhanced, but it's not increasing the volume. So it's just giving you it's giving you more of that lower end. And if you turn it up too much, like anything else on this device, now we sound totally closed in and completely not natural. So we'll turn this back down. Again, a little goes a long way when it comes to something like this device. About 3 is more than enough for me to give you a little bit of a boost on the low end and give you that more of that AM radio kind of sound. Now, this will do the same thing for the high end, what most people will call presence. It seems like it adds some air to the room, if you will. All of a sudden, things on the top end just start being a little bit clearer. Your voice becomes easier to understand. It just feels a little bit, it just feels clearer, sounds clearer. But it's, again, nothing's being overemphasized until you really start pushing this all the way up. And once this thing gets all the way up, you can hear that harshness. And it doesn't sound natural, and it sounds too harsh, and it doesn't sound good. So again, you want to bring this thing down to about 3 or so, and it gives you just enough of a boost to where everything sounds clearer because of the high frequency. Your lower end sounds better, so you get a little bit more oomph there. So you have that AM radio god sound, which if you're a podcaster, we all want that. We want your voice to stand out. We don't want it to sound weak. We want it to sound like you're on the radio. That's the whole point of, a lot of people like doing the podcasting. And as we move down to the final controls on the device, you'll see this is the expander gate. Now, this is important to keep your room noises away. Again, some people, you can spend hundreds or thousands of dollars and you can put up audio panels in the room to deaden the sound, to get rid of the echo. For me, I have some, when the door is closed, that's a nice big flat surface. You have the filing cabinet, you have a flat wall, even though there's photographs and that hanging on the walls. I, have a lot of flat surfaces here, and that's going to give you some echo. And that's not what you want in your audio recordings. You want your audio recordings to be as dry as possible. You don't want to hear all of those extra noises. You want nothing but your voice. If that, in the perfect world, just your voice being fed into the audio recorder without any of the echo, without any of the room noise is what you want. So in this particular part of the device, the expander gate, it's a fairly simple thing. You have a threshold and you have a ratio. The ratio, the 2-to-1, works for me. It's how it's mixing these two things together as far as the noises that are going on when everything is quiet and when you're speaking. Now, the threshold is what's going to decide where this thing turns on and where it turns off. If you turn this completely to off, If you turn up, depending if you're listening with headphones or if you're listening without headphones right now and your volume's up fairly high, when I stop speaking, you should be able to hear the computer fan going and the air purifier running in the background, along with what sounds like a little bit of an audio hum, which is normal from audio equipment. But you can definitely hear that. So what you want to do is you want to take this and you want to turn this threshold up until you can barely hear anything else. Once you hear this, when everything is silent, turn this until you can basically hear a little bit. And for me, that's the setting right about there. So when I'm stopped speaking, it takes everything off. It stops. You don't hear it. And then here, the ratio, when you turn that to minimum, you can still hear the background noise. So as you turn this up, the background noise gets less and less. And right about the point that I get to 2:1, that's when the background noise disappears and I can just hear my voice. But again, if you go too far up with it to 10:1, you start hearing a little bit more of a harsh sound. It doesn't really sound as natural. So you really, with all of these, there's a pretty simple rule of thumb, which is you want to apply the least amount of processing that you can in order to still sound natural, but to let the device do its work. So you want the device to cut the room noise, but you don't want it to sound completely antiseptic. You want to give yourself a boost on the low end and high end, but you don't want to overdo it to where it sounds unnatural. You want the compressor to do its job, but you don't want it to compress too much again because it doesn't sound right. There's a fine line in all of these settings, and all of them combined. Again, if we can turn this the whole bypass here, this is just my voice without the compressor or anything else. You can hear the room noise. There's no enhancements being done on the low end or high end. You're basically hearing a much more accurate replication of what's going on in the room. You can hear a little bit more of that echo going on in the room. My voice sounds a little bit more hollow. It's just the way that it works. And as you speak louder, you can hear things starting to get a little bit overmodulated, and they're starting to distort, which isn't a good thing. So everything just seems a little bit harsher. You turn the device on, if I could hit the right button, and all of a sudden everything starts sounding good again. The background noise disappears, my voice starts sounding better, and everything is absolutely great again. The last thing on here is the gain switch. For a lot of times you'll be running this at 0, but because I'm running the device into a Focusrite Scarlett that I'm using the microphone out on this. I should probably go through the line in, but I'm using the microphone out into the microphone in here, and it's a very hot signal. At 0, it was distorting everything, so that's turned down to 0 gain. But again, that keeps everything nice and clean. You don't have a lot of gain. You don't have the distortion going on. So overall, that's a good thing. You don't have to use a cloud lifter with this device, but it certainly helps if you have a microphone like the Shure SM7B or the Heil PR40. If you get one of these, and this is one of the newer additions to my rig here, if you get one of these Electro Voice RE320s, easy for me to say, you really don't need the cloud lifter or the Fethead, which is another brand of device that does the similar thing, just giving you clear gain in the line, because this one has a little bit of a hotter sound right off the bat. But the cloud lifter helps most microphones, so I run it through almost everything, and it can definitely help even a microphone like this, which has a nice hot signal off the bat. So I hope this gives you an idea of what this device does, how this channel strip works, how it processes your signal. Again, it doesn't get it to USB. So if you want this to go in and record it off of a laptop or record it off of a desktop, you're still going to need a device to do that. And for me, what we're using is a Focusrite Scarlett Solo here. And we basically have the output of the DBX, the channel strip going into here. This is then converting it to USB for my computer, and it's also being fed. There's also a left and right output on the back, the normal old RCA jacks, which I have feeding into a Zoom audio recorder. So we're recording the audio twice just to make sure if something goes wrong, we have an extra copy. And the Zoom records a little bit of a higher audio rate and a better signal. So usually what I'll do is record a video. Sometimes the audio directly out of the USB is great. Other times we'll use the upper higher quality audio from the Zoom recorder. But just be aware, if you're looking to do podcasting, you do need a recording device. So if you're doing it into a Zoom, you can go directly out of this channel strip. You can go from your microphone to the channel strip out into a Zoom recorder. That's all you need. Everything will be done. You don't need to do anything else. If you're going into a computer, you go from your microphone to the channel strip into something that converts it to USB, and then the USB goes into your computer. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. We watch the listings here, the videos, and we will give you an answer if we can. If not, we'll certainly try to find one. But I hope this overview at least gives you an idea of what this device does. I like these channel strips a lot. At the $200 price point, they're not exactly pro gear, but they're prosumer. They're very high quality. They give you very high quality audio without having to spend a ton of money. They definitely up your game a ton over not having one, especially if you're using an XLR microphone and just trying to plug that into something that will convert it to USB. Going from my microphone directly into the Scarlett, everything sounds right, but it's like bypassing this device again. So you have the room noise. It doesn't take care of that. It doesn't give you the compression. It doesn't take care of the highs and lows. It doesn't even everything out. So even if you get a device like the Scarlett, that'll feed the audio signal into your computer, but it's not doing any of the processing. Sure, you can do a lot of the stuff in the post again, but that's more work and more time. So I like to make it easy. Do the stuff beforehand. Let the hardware do the work, and let the computer just do the recording. Again, this has been a review of the DBX 286s. Definitely give this one a highly recommended rating. It's a very high quality piece of gear. It does the job that it's supposed to do, and it's easy to use, especially once you get it set up and understand what each one of these settings do, and we hope that we helped you figure that out here. My name is Darren O'Neill. Thanks for watching.
When I podcast or record voiceovers, I use a Shure SM7B microphone into a Scarlett Focusrite 18i8. But recently I wanted to get more gain and processing on it before going into Adobe Audition. After some research, I landed on the DBX 286s microphone preamp and processor. In this video, I'm going to review it and walk through what cables you need to use it, what each of the dials on it do, what to set them all to, and any pros and cons I've seen while using this. Let's start on the back. First, you have the AC power plug, but no on-off switch. So if you plug this in, it's always on. Then there are 3 input and output options. I use a regular XLR cable to go from my Shure SM7B to the mic input on my DBX 286s. Then I use a 3-foot XLR male to 1/4-inch TRS male cable to go from the line output jack on the DBX 286s to an XLR input on my Focusrite 18i8. There's also a line input jack and an insert jack that you'd use for an effects loop or a separate mic preamp, but remember, you only have one output on this device. On the front, you'll want to move from left to right as you set this up, so let's start with the mic preamp section. For the gain knob, talk into your microphone or play whatever other input device you're using, like a guitar, and watch the lights while you turn the knob until you're consistently hitting the -10 level. You don't really want to hit 0, and you definitely don't want to hit clip. For the Shure SM7B, I have my gain set up pretty much all the way. For the 48-volt power button, if you don't see any levels, it's probably because you're using a condenser mic that needs phantom power. So be sure to turn this on. For my dynamic mic, I don't need this, so I have it set to off. For For the 80 Hz bypass, I leave this off because it gives you less dynamic range, but if you're in a room with a hum below that frequency, experiment with turning it on. Then you have the process bypass button. If you turn this on, it essentially disables everything to the right, the compressor, the de-esser, the enhancer, and gate that we're about to set up. You'd really only use this for making, a comparison between the processed and unprocessed settings, or using this only as a dedicated preamp. We'll leave it off and we'll move along. So next up, we have the compressor. In the compressor settings, you have drive and density. Drive determines the gain reduction signal. Turning this clockwise will increase the input signal, which increases the amount of gain reduction. Turning it fully counterclockwise to off allows the compressor to pass all signals unattenuated, basically bypassing this compressor section. The density knob controls the release time of the compressor. At 0, you get a slow release for smooth compression, which you'd use to gate out noise present behind your vocals or your acoustic instruments. At 10, you get a fast or tight release, which will be used on a kick or snare drum. Next, you see the gain reduction meter in decibels. The meter shows you the true peak gain reduction in decibels. If the red LED at the far left lights up, no further gain reduction is available. Next, you have the de-esser. This starts with frequency, and this control sets the high pass frequency of the filter used in the de-esser to help remove the sound when talking. 4 to 8 kilohertz is best for when you're doing vocal processing. Then you have threshold. The threshold sets the sensitivity of the de-esser as a percentage of the average input level. LEDs light up for 1 dB and 6 dB when active. Now on to the final section with the enhancer. The first enhancer knob is for LF detail, or low frequency. This enhancer control applies a boost to 80 and 250 Hz without making the bass sound too muddy or boomy. The high frequency detail enhancer works to add definition and crispness to vocals, guitars, and other instruments. It's basically a little bit of magic for making things sound better at the top end. Then you have the expander and gate controls. First up is the threshold control, which determines when the expander and gate will fully open up and allow the input signal to pass through to output. Turning it fully counterclockwise turns it off completely. I have mine at about 30 dB, so anything below 30 isn't passed through to the output and works as a bit of a noise gate. The LED lights show up when it is on and off. So as I'm talking here, you can see that it turns green. When I'm not talking, it turns red, and no signal is pushed through the device. The expansion ratio control controls the expansion and attenuation applied to the input signal once it's below the threshold we set. So if it's below 30 dBs, what's the ratio it's going to apply to that signal? Lower thresholds like 1:1 or 2:1 are better for slower material like vocals. Higher thresholds, up to 10:1, are for very fast inputs like percussion. So you've made it through the whole device, and I could have just told you where I set all my levels, but unless you're using the exact same equipment in a similar environment as me, your settings are going to need to be a little different. So I wanted to teach you what each of these knobs and buttons do. Now you can tweak the device a little bit to your own needs. To wrap up, I'm happy with the results I'm getting from this to boost the gain of my microphone, plus add a simple compressor, gate, and de-esser. It would be great if you could run multiple mics in and out using the same settings without having to buy an additional one for each microphone or input you want to use, but I understand the limitations technically and hardware-wise of that. And unless you're going to rack mount this with other audio gear, it's quite large to put on a desk or hide in a cabinet or drawer. If you have questions about this setup or the DBX 286, leave them in the comments below, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel for more video and audio gear reviews, as well as setup tutorials like the ones I made for the Focusrite Solo 2i2 and 18i8. And until next time, remember, if you're going to do it, might as well do it on video.